CBIC has issued a circular clarifying certain issues in respect of fake invoicing and fake input as credit. Let us see the circular in detail. Circular number 171 bar 03 bar 2022 GST dated 6th July 2022. The subject is clarification on various issues relating to the applicability of demand and penalty provisions under the Central Goods and Services Tax Act 2017 in respect of transactions involving fake invoices. 3 issues are being addressed in this circular. The first one, in case where the registered person A has issued a tax invoice to another registered person B without any underlying supply of goods or services or both, whether such transaction will be covered as supply under Section 7 of CGST Act and whether any demand and recovery can be made from A in respect of the said transaction under the provisions of Section 73 or Section 74 of CGST Act. Also, whether any penal action can be taken against registered person A in such cases. The clarification given is, since there has been only issuance of tax invoice by registered person A to registered person B without underlying supply of goods or services or both. Therefore, such activity does not constitute supply as defined under Section 7 of CGST Act. Since there is no supply by A to B in respect of such tax invoice in terms of provisions of Section 7 of CGST Act, so no tax liability arises against A for the transaction. Therefore, no demand and recovery is required to be made against A under the provisions of Section 73 or Section 74 of CGST Act in respect of the same. Section 73 is demand and recovery proceedings when tax is not paid, short paid, erroneously refunded or ITC, wrongly availed or utilized without the intention of fraud or any willful misstatement or suppression of facts. It is Section 73. Section 74 is demand and recovery proceedings when tax is not paid, short paid, erroneously refunded or ITC, wrongly evaded or utilized, when it is done with the intention of fraud or any willful misstatement or suppression of facts. That is Section 74. These two sections cannot be charged against A, so penalty cannot be levied as per these sections 73 and 74 to A. But the registered person A shall however be liable for penal action under Section 122 subsection 1 clause 2 of CGST Act for issuing tax invoices without actual supply of goods or services or both. Here Section 122 deals with penalty for offences. Under Section 122 subsection 1 clause 2, where a taxable person issues any invoice or bill without supply of goods or services or both in violation of the provisions of this Act or the rules made thereunder, this provision will be charged against A. Here the maximum penalty will be rupees 20,000. Rupees 20,000 in the sense 10,000 CGST and 10,000 SGST. Since there is no supply, there is no tax due. Tax will be due from the person A. There is no tax liability for person A. Therefore, maximum penalty will be rupees 20,000. The second situation, a registered person A has issued tax invoice to another registered person B without any underlying supply of goods or services or both. B avails input tax credit on the basis of the said tax invoice. B further issues invoice along with underlying supply of goods or services or both to his buyers and utilizes ITC availed on the basis of above mentioned invoices issued by A for payment of his tax liability in respect of his said outward supplies, whether B will be liable for the demand and recovery of the said ITC along with penal action under the provisions of Section 73 or Section 74 or any other provisions of the CGST Act. The registered person B, the clarification given is the registered person B has availed and utilized fraudulent ITC on the basis of tax invoice issued by A without receiving the goods or services or both in contravention of the provisions of Section 16 subsection 2 clause B of CGST Act. In this provision, ITC shall be available to the taxpayer only when the taxpayer receives goods or services or both. Then only the taxpayer will be eligible to claim ITC. So, the person B has utilized ITC without receipt of goods or service or both. So, he shall be liable for demand and recovery of said ITC along with penalty under the provisions of Section 74 of CGST Act. Section 74 deals with when tax is not paid or short paid or erroneously refunded or ITC wrongly availed and utilized with the intention of fraud or suppression of or willful misstatement. Therefore, the person B will be liable for penalty as per Section 74 of CGST Act along with applicable interest under provisions of Section 50 of the CGST Act. Further, as per the provisions of Section 75 subsection 13 of CGST Act, if penal action for fraudulent availment or utilization of ITC is taken against B under Section 74 of the CGST Act, which means when the penal action is taken as per Section 74, so no penalty will be charged to the person B for the same act. Which means that if penalty is imposed against B as per Section 74, B shall not be liable for further penalty, including penalty under Section 122. Then the third situation, a registered person A has issued tax invoice to another registered person B without any underlying supply of goods or services or both. B avails input tax credit on the basis of the said tax invoice and further passes on the said input tax credit to another registered person C by issuing invoices without underlying supply of goods or services or both. Whether B will be liable for the demand and recovery and penal action under the provisions of Section 73 or Section 74 or any other provisions of the CGST Act. In this situation, the input tax credit is being availed by Mr. B on the basis of tax invoice issued by Mr. A without actually receiving goods or services or both. It is being utilized by Mr. B for passing on of the input tax credit by issuing tax invoice to Mr. C without any underlying supply of goods or services or both. In this situation, there is no supply of goods or services or both by Mr. B to Mr. C in respect of this transaction. Therefore, no tax will be required to be paid by Mr. B in respect of the same. The input tax credit availed by Mr. B in his electronic credit ledger on the basis of tax invoice issued by Mr. A without actual receipt of goods or services or both, it is ineligible in terms of Section 16 subsection 2 clause B of the CGST Act. In this situation, there is no supply of goods or services or both by Mr. B to Mr. C in respect of this transaction. Therefore, no tax will be required to be paid by Mr. B in respect of this transaction. In this situation, no demand and recovery of either input tax credit wrongly or fraudulently availed by B in such case, or tax liability or the said outward transaction, not outward supply. There is no supply, outward transaction, which means B has issued invoice to Mr. C. That transaction, there is no tax liability, will be required to be paid by Mr. B. No, there is no tax liability for Mr. B. Therefore, no penalty will be required to be paid by Mr. B under the provisions of Section 73 or Section 74 of CGST Act. However, the person B will be liable for penal action both under Section 122 subsection 1 clause 2 and Section 122 subsection 1 clause 7 of the CGST Act. Here Section 122 subsection 1 clause 2 is where a taxable person who issues any invoice or bill without supply of goods or services or both in violation of the provision of this act or rule made thereunder. Section 122 subsection 1 clause 7, which means where a taxable person who takes or utilizes input tax credit without actual receipt of goods or services or both, either fully or partially, in contravention of the provisions of this act or the rules made thereunder. So this person, Mr. B, will be liable for penal action both under Section 122 subsection 1 clause 2 and Section 122 subsection 1 clause 7 of the CGST Act for issuing invoices without any actual supply of goods and services, as also for taking or utilizing input tax credit without actual receipt of goods or services or both. Maximum penalty liable for Mr. B is rupees 20,000, 10,000 CGST plus 10,000 SGST comes at rupees 20,000. If you like the video, please like, comment and share the video. For more updates, please subscribe to our channel. For further notifications, please press the bell icon. Thank you.